including all the 4 authors of the memo, including all the people that signed that letter on September 15, 2001.
Yo.
They signed a letter to Clinton in 98 before 9/11, before the WMD stuff, supporting a toppling of Saddam Hussein. In other words, they wanted it before there was a 9/11. They wanted it before there was popular support, before it was in the conversation. 9/11 happens, and within 5 days, it's not just 4, you got 40 prominent Jewish neocons, Washington Post, Weekly Standard, New...
Look, he ain't even got nothing to say. He trying to, Destiny, he trying to find some way, somehow to interrupt him. He can't, look, man, Nick done bodied him, bro.
Republic, Wall Street Journal, New York Times, they all write. And by the way, all Jewish columnists too. Charles Krauthammer's another one. They all sign a letter saying you got to go to war, not just in Iraq, but against Hezbollah, against Syria, against Iran. What I'm trying to do is paint a picture. I'm not saying that the Jewish lobby is omnipotent. I'm not saying that they control every aspect of government. I'm saying that it's not a coincidence that they're there. It's not innocuous that they're there. That was the original premise of the debate is, are they just people that happen to be there and do things? Or are there people in these positions where it becomes problematic because they have a tribal loyalty, a political, religious loyalty? That was the thesis of the debate. I never said, you know, they control everything and this and that. And I think that's been basically established. But
I think they control everything. But it's just my thinking, though. But we know something going on, and we know who's at the top of the list. The only list.
But you want to debate like, well, why didn't they do this? Why didn't they do that? Without actually engaging with any of the evidence I provided.
I've engaged with everything you've given me.
No.
But you're not providing anything compelling.
Okay.
I don't know why,
Okay.
if like everything you're saying, for instance, like, so first of all, let's acknowledge you are purporting that these Jewish people are among the most powerful and influential people in all of world history, right? If they're controlling literal foreign policy from the United States of America, which is the strongest empire that has ever existed in U.S. history and in the world history, right? You're asserting that these people are the strongest and most influential people in all of world history. And then you're telling me that for the first Gulf War, they couldn't just get rid of Saddam?
They are. If you can't question nothing that they do, they could tell you any and everything, but you can't question nothing. And if they do allow you to question them, they're going to give you some half-assed answer. Or they're just not going to say nothing at all and just walk away.
After we used chemical weapons, you're telling me that they needed 9/11 to go in to Iraq the second time? Why didn't we also go into it? You're saying that Israel wanted to get rid of Syria, they wanted to get rid of the Ayatollah in Iran. Why the fuck didn't we go in? Why didn't we go to those two countries next, right after Iraq? We went to Afghanistan, didn't we? We didn't like Pakistan. We went into there to kill Osama bin Laden. Bin Laden.
Sometimes people do it the sneaky way, infiltrate. This ain't it ain't no heads up. They thought of a plan by going for the top first before you go to the soldiers. Because you go to the top, you control everything else. That's why they ain't do heads up or head on.
Why didn't we just go right into Iran, right into Syria after Iraq?
Well, and I addressed that. Again, it doesn't mean that they are omnipotent, but they are pushing for that constantly. They are pushing for war with Iran constantly. They're pushing for war with Syria constantly. And you're ignoring the fact that there is a shadow war going on against Assad in Syria. There has been for over a decade now. And that is supported by Israel. That's supported by the United States. And by the way, it also has John McCain's fingerprints all over. We could get into
why not get rid of Assad like we did with Gaddafi if the Jews are so influential?
Because the war was extremely unpopular. Barack Obama gets elected in 2008 on this, we're going to end the war in Iraq. And Barack Obama actually,
whoa.
Hang on. You're interrupting me. Okay. I'm answering your point. You said,
it's going to be 10 more minutes of rambling. I'm going to bring you back to this, but go ahead.
It's not rambling. Don't say it's rambling because we're making an argument
here.
It is
rambling.
Okay. The argument is not that they control everything and they're so powerful. It's that they're...
He rambling because you don't like what he's saying. Look, man, I'm going to tell a lot of white people this, man. Because you cheer up Barack Obama doesn't mean we don't look at your ass sideways. Barack Obama does not run all black people at all. No rappers, entertainers, none of that. Y'all need to get that shit out y'all head.
They're extremely influential. They have a tribal loyalty. They use their influence to advance it. That's the thesis. So to say that when you say, well, why didn't they just do everything they wanted? Well, because I think that they don't have absolute control of our country. Thank God for that. It doesn't mean that they're not pushing for it. It doesn't mean that they're not achieving that to some extent. And they almost defeated Syria if it wasn't for the fact that Russia came in, if it wasn't for the fact that Trump came in. And actually, Trump ended our support.
Oh, so that's another reason why they mad at Trump. I mean, at Russia. Russia helped stop Israel. Sure, like home magnifying glass.
For regime change in Syria is one of the first things he did in April 2017. And you know what they did a minute later? Chemical weapons attack. Amazing timing, literally. And I remember because it's when I started my show in April.
Total goalpost move, by the way.
No, it's not a total. Whoa, it's not a total goalpost move. We're explaining about how these power dynamics.
He said he moved the goalpost, like he didn't do it or try to do it. See, people recognize what other people doing because they do it. They damn self.
Work. Trump comes in, and I think it was a Friday or a Saturday, Pompeo, the then Secretary of State, or no, I'm sorry, it's Rex Tillerson. Tillerson, Nikki Haley come out and say, we're no longer pursuing regime change against Assad. Meaning, in other words, the United States was pursuing regime change, like you said they weren't. Literally 5 days later, that following Tuesday, boom, chemical weapons attack in Homs. Will the United States respond? The same thing happened in 2013. And this gets back to, hang on. I promise I'm almost finished. And this gets back to the Kurds. When they say,
you mad
because
you think he rambling.
They said the same thing about Syria in 2013 with Obama. They said the same thing in 2017 with Syria and Trump.
It's always the random names,
Oh, you think he rambling. You mad because you can't defeat him. So you trying to hurry up and shut him up. You ain't do your homework. It's almost like the Locks versus Dipset. Nick is Locks. Destiny is Dipset. Let's continue.
It's not random. It's not random. We're explaining how this stuff works rather than, oh, the Gaddafi was a total freaking asshole and so was Assad. We're saying that there are competing interests here and there are political realities. They couldn't support another ground war in Syria after Iraq, after it was wildly unpopular, after they tried to do nation building. They fought a shadow war there anyway, and they tried to force two presidents to go to war. They tried to force Trump into a war. They tried to force Obama into a war in Syria. You're rubbing your face. Did that not happen? Was there no pressure to go into Syria?
Yeah, okay, so firstly, you lied about your thesis. You lied about no. If you want to go point by point, we can do that. But now you just rambled a whole bunch of dumb shit. So
no, but you're rubbing your face like that's not true.
Yeah, because everything you're saying is wrong.
So was there pressure for Obama and Trump to go into Syria?
He said everything you saying is wrong and retarded. See, them liberals, when you make a valid point, they start calling your names. He know he lost this, man. He gonna have to debate somebody lower, or he gonna try to throw out. He was saying racist stuff about the Jews. Watch.
Syria with boots on the ground, 100,000 troops.
But we didn't do it, did we?
No, because they don't control everything. But there was
they only control the most powerful nation in the world when they want to, but not when they don't want to.
They did it in 2003, and it became wildly unpopular.
I'm going to find out. You said the JQ, and I pointed this out at the beginning of the conversation because I want to make this known, and I'm going to reiterate. You just rephrased the JQ as some Jewish people of Jewish descent in the United States have loyalties to their home country or the home country of their families. That is not the JQ. The JQ does not say people whose parents come from Israel
You're
that
telling
are
me
in
what
the
the
United
JQ
States.
is?
Yeah, well, because you're dancing about
I
a
know
very
what the
weak
JQ
version
is,
of it.
believe
Because
me.
I agree with your
A weak
version of
version
I
of it?
agree with your version of the JQ.
Okay, then we agree.
We
Debate
do.
over.
We do. People who have Israeli parents probably like Israel. That's not a very compelling conspiracy, though.
Wow.
The real JQ is the idea that Jewish people in the United States government have an undue influence that can supersede or rewrite the will of the American people or other politicians in office to use the United States as a puppet for Israel. That's the JQ.
Yeah, that's exactly what's going on.
The JQ is not. Can you acknowledge that, or do you think the JQ is just that some Jewish?
It's all of it. Ain't no one side. It's all of it.
People in the United States like Israel.
Oh, hold on. So
Fuck, there's like 20 other things you said.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
No, because if we're gonna go real JQ, what it was originally put out there by Hitler. What do we do with the Jewish people? They're a problem for society. We need to get rid of them.
And that's what he thinks the JQ is. The JQ is not just Jewish people.
There's 100 other countries. But you gotta modernize it now. So that was the original.
Hitler wasn't talking about Jews. He was talking about those Freemasons. If you read anything on Hitler,
JQ was like, what do we do with the Jewish people? That's where the Havara Agreement came in.
Well, yeah, but remember, he said Netanyahu wrote the document and then gave orders to the four Zionist Jewish people in the United States.
Well, I'm getting there.
Yeah,
what we're saying now, he's arguing, right? So the JQ, that's what it originally was, but now it's more modernized now. What the JQ is nowadays is, do American Zionists who have dual allegiance to the United States and Israel, do they push Israeli interests before their own as American citizens, especially in U.S. government? He's saying,
hell yeah, they do. That's part of the code. You can't do business with them if you ain't willing to push their agenda, their own agenda for them. Like what?
That they do. They write foreign policy that influences American policy that benefits Israel, which puts the United States in compromising situations. He cited wars, etc., that weren't necessarily always in our best interest. And he's saying that they don't control everything, but they definitely have a very strong say in American foreign policy. That's what he's arguing.
And if there were wars that the United States is running into to its own detriment that it didn't have popular support for, that might be something I would agree with, right? However, Nick himself stated, why didn't we go into Syria? Because there wasn't the popular support. Wait. This is so important, okay? Because it's part of the experience. He said, I asked, why didn't we go into Syria? Because he said that the Jewish people wanted us to get rid of Iran and they wanted us to get rid of Syria. But we didn't do that. Why? Because there wasn't popular support for it. But earlier, when I asked about popular support in the United States, he said the Jews controlled the media. What changed? There's always a reason why at some points the Jews are in control of what they need to be in control of to explain something. They control the media. That's why we went into Iraq. It was manufactured consent. Well, then why did we go into Syria and Iran afterwards? Well, I guess the Jews didn't control the media then. It doesn't make sense. Also, he brings this thing up about how Trump tried to end the war in Syria because ostensibly he's not bought off by the Jews, except Trump himself admittedly loves Israel, loves Jewish people, like every old person in the United States does. And Trump did one of the most unpopular moves.
You do got the good side of Israel who ain't down with the negative side that's in control.
Worldwide, and to Palestinians, he moved the fucking embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, a move that I think was only recognized by like 3 countries in the world because it was so unbelievably unpopular. So I don't know how you're going to sit here and tell me that Trump worked in defiance of Jewish control in the government while also being one of the biggest Israeli simps that the government has ever had.
Yeah, so let's take this piece by piece. First of all, without interruptions this time. So, and not rambling, I'm going to address all your points. So in the first place, I mean, you just got done saying, well, I agree with your version of the JQ. I'm arguing with some other JQ. I'm arguing with something else. If you want to talk about other things, we could get into other things. But I said my thesis at the beginning.
We'll cover the media next. The Jews controlling the media next.
But if you didn't listen, then that's fine.
Go ahead, Nick.
So I said that about the JQ at the beginning, and you're like, well, if you're saying that. And by the way, I love the throwing the head back. It's so adorable. And then the other thing, and then another interruption.
Yeah, go ahead.
And then the other thing is this. So then you throw out and say, well, wait a second. They brought us to war in Iraq, but they couldn't bring us to war in Syria? Yes, because the little thing called 9/11 happened in 2001. So there was widespread support, not just for a war against Afghanistan or Iraq, for a war on terror. People are calling for a holy war against Islam, a civilizational war. We go to war in Iraq. under false pretenses, like we talked about. The people that created the Office of Special Plans, that manufactured the evidence for the war in Iraq, were all Jewish Zionists that wanted a war in Iraq for Israel. And by the way, all the people that pushed the evidence was the Prime Minister of Israel, Netanyahu. It was also all the Jewish Zionists in the media, which you never seem to address either. You say, well, they control the media. I told you, 40 of the most influential publications published a letter on September 15th.
Look at Destiny. He using a lame tactic. He know he's defeated, so he trying to basically look like he ignoring him on purpose to think that what's his name gonna get mad. See, he been around a lot of weak people. That's how you know what he doing. Cause only people who do stuff like that know that another person is emotional. Like he giving off, that's a sign of disrespect. On his phone, he wasn't on his phone with the first debate, but he on his phone with Nick because he know he lose.
Calling for that war. We go into the war on a false pretense, riding popular support that was based on 9/11 and the false pretense. The war's a disaster. There's high casualties. It goes on for a decade. It's wildly unpopular.
Unless he taking notes or repeating everything he's saying so he can basically rebuttal it.
And you say, oh, so, they control the media and the war machine sometimes, but not all the time? Yeah. They had more play after 9/11. They had more play when they manufactured the first line to Iraq. They didn't have as much play to get us into Syria. It doesn't mean they didn't use the same playbook. They did use the same playbook. They used a fake chemical weapons attack in 2013. They conducted shadow warfare against Syria in the same way. Funded the so-called moderate Syrian opposition. They brought back ISIS, all these kinds of things. Just because Obama came in, and Obama was anti-war just like Trump in a certain respect, just because Obama balked and turned it over to Congress and Congress said no, doesn't mean the Jews don't control everything or they don't have influence or something. They exhausted the mandate they had.
I know they got heavily influenced over a lot of people. A lot of them.
From 9/11, and they also destroyed their credibility with the WMD lie. The same is true in 2017. So just because Iraq happened, 9/11 happened, to say that things are not the same today as they were then does not disprove the point that Jewish people have influence. What's more, and this is the last thing I want to say, because you actually said said something revolutionary. You said that Jewish people have loyalty to Israel, and you said it like, duh, yeah. I fucking agree. But it turns out that's the definition of anti-Semitism. That's what got me in so much trouble from the beginning. I was a normal college conservative, and then I put out a tweet in 2016, and I said, if you have dual loyalty to Israel, right now? I said, if you have dual loyalty to Israel, I said, you're not an American patriot. And Ben Shapiro comes in and says, well, that's the definition of anti-Semitism. And I looked it up, and it is. That's the FBI, that's the State Department, that's the CIA's definition of anti-Semitism. So what you just said, if you say that Jews have more loyalty to Israel, I absolutely agree. That's the basis of the JQ. But earlier you said people do things. There's Asians that are programmers, there's Mexicans that are landscapers. Now you're saying Jews may have some loyalty to Israel. So, you can shift the goalpost, but you change your mind on that over the course of this talk.
Okay, now the next topic that we're going to talk.
He destroyed him on this with Israel. Y'all go look it up. But they both make some good points. But Nick, he destroyed him. Now, they should have had somebody else other than Destiny. Because he ain't it.